Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in First Chronicles, and I'm just kind of titling this chapters 1 through 9 because we're going to go through the genealogies. And yes, they are tedious, they are long, they are extensive, and there is a purpose for that. As we said, the genealogies, and I'm not going to list every name. I'm not going to read every name, besides butchering the Hebrew pronunciations, because most of it, of course, doesn't apply to us not being Jewish. Now, what is interesting is that if these genealogies only go as far as Jesus, and so again, I'm looking and trying to see, are there genealogies since Jesus? Okay, that's just a sidebar note. Are there genealogies since Jesus? Okay, but as far as the purpose for Scripture, the genealogies point to the bloodline of Jesus. They point to and establish him as the rightful heir, the Messiah, from a legal perspective. From a cultural perspective, from a, so that the Jewish Messiah, as prophesied and fulfilled by Jesus, the prophecies fulfilled through Jesus, okay, as the rightful heir, okay. I did say, and I kind of talking about genealogies, just want to kind of quick reminder that, again, these genealogies, the primary purpose of these genealogies is to establish the legitimate bloodline of Jesus. All of the other lists of genealogies, they designed to show and lead away from Jesus, and then they are also designed to give legitimacy to individual Jews, especially during this time, and whatever tribes they may live in. And so, or whatever Jewish claim they may have. So, for example, if a person says, I have the rightful heir to the throne, then you could show by genealogy if you have that or not. In other words, if you're not the son of David, then you don't have, you didn't have the rightful legal heir anyway. With the exception, of course, through the northern kingdom of Israel. Okay. But this is why we have the genealogies, is to make a clear distinction between the northern tribe, which had its kingdom, its king, and its heirs, and then the southern, which is Judah, which was whom Jesus would come out of. All right, so let's go to First Chronicles chapter 1. All right, so now he starts again from Adam, and then, of course, Adam being the first man, right? What is interesting is that notice not all of the descendants are listed here, okay? Because Scripture, we're only interested in the bloodline of Jesus, okay? So not all of Adam's sons are listed here. Now, let me also say this, and since we're not going to go through it, but this is very important, even when reading Genesis, that you understand the narrative is designed to simply tell this story, the bloodline of Jesus. And I say that because when you read Genesis and you wonder, for example, one of the biggest questions that people ask is, where did Cain get his wife? Well, here's the thing: we don't know. But the answer to that is not important, because the story it's not what Genesis wasn't designed to be a complete, detailed history. So we don't know. Adam could have had hundreds of sons and daughters. They're just not listed because that's not the point of this the biblical narrative. That's why. And as you see here, we go from Adam to Seth. And if you go back to the Genesis narrative, it says, and then you see this was sort of the beginning of the righteous seed. So you had Cain and Abel. Abel was righteous, but remember, Cain's brother murdered him. And then you see Seth. So this is Seth is mentioned. Now, of course, you had hundreds of years. And so, we just, where Adam could have been having children and stuff. And then this is the narrative that now is going to begin the bloodline of Jesus, Seth. So Adam, Seth, Enos, Kenan, Mahalia, Jared, Enoch. Now remember, Enoch is interesting. Enoch was taken, one of the first people that's listed that God took or raptured. Okay, Methuselah was the longest living human being recorded. Then Lamech, and then he says Noah's sons. So you have Noah and then Noah's sons. So of course we have the flood at this point, and then we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the three sons of Noah are important because after the flood, which wiped out all living creatures that breathe, that had breath in them, it was through Shem, Ham, and Japheth that the earth was repopulated. And we're most interested in Shem's genealogy. Now, verse 5, Japheth, sons, Gomer, Magog, Medea, Jubal, Jabin, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. Now, I'm not going to get too engrossed into this, only just to kind of give, just as a point of reference, there are those who try to divide these up by races. Now, if you kind of think about what it's in the mind of God as He has revealed it. First and foremost, there is no such thing as race. As we see in Acts, it says, by one man's blood, right here, Adam, then you have the entire face of the earth dwell. All men came from that. Race becomes interesting in our culture during the Atlantic slave trade. And what's important to understand about that is, in order to perpetuate that, you had to condition the minds. Race was invented. Racism, the term racism, was invented. And there were those Christians who then tried to say, well, okay, these sons then were divided, and what is believed in where they settled. So Japheth's sons, people will say, well, these were the Caucasian people. And then if you, all right, and then Ham, they would say, well, these were the Negroid or black people. But then here's the interesting thing. What do you do with Shem? And we're going to come down to Shem, son. But what do you do with him? Right? Who are they? I'm sorry. So I'll come back to that. So I'm saying is that this ideal that when you go through the Noah's son, and then you try to describe it by race, that's the error. Now, there are different shades, right? There are different ethnicities for sure. There are different looks. So Asian people, without a doubt, look different than black people. Without a doubt, that look different than the European people. DNA-wise, there's really no difference in between race. Now, there have been Christian leaders in the past that, and let me just read it, and then we get to it. You can see where the error comes in at. So you start with Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Verse 5, Japheth's sons, Gomer, Magog, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. So it is believed, or people will try to describe, because some of these where they kind of settled would be in the European nations. Then if you look at the ethnic makeup of Europeans in terms of skin tone, certain characteristics. May be true. I'm not even debating it. What I'm saying is that it's not the racial issue. Even if you want to use the term race, I wouldn't even, it's not word to me to argue with that. Anthropologists certainly can argue that point. But the human race is all of one race, and that's the most important thing. Verse 6, Gomer's son, Ashkenaz, Ripha, and Togarmah, Japheth's sons, Isha, Tishmish, Kittim, and Radam. Now verse 8, Ham's sons. Now this is important here. Ham's sons. Okay. So then, at this point, by the way, let me go back for a moment. And let's look at this for a moment here. So look at the Noah's sons. Verse 4, Noah, and then Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth. So the question here then, now think about this now. What color are they? In other words, if you want to talk about race, right? So what color are they? Shem, Ham, Japheth. And if you think about the different races of people or ethnicity, how do you divide that up? Now, anthropologists and genetics people try to do that. So you kind of determine that by where people live, the continents on where they live at. And I'm going to bring up something in a moment to tell you how do we get continents. So at some point, how do you get the indigenous people of America? How do you get South America? Right? So at some point we know that people travel. So we start with Noah. You start with where it is believed the ark rested. And then you say, with these three sons and their wives, the earth spread out. So how do you get South America, right? So at some point, in other words, the biblical narrative doesn't cover it because that is not the point of the biblical narrative. But my point is this. Obviously, God had in mind different ethnicities. As you all can tell, I am a black man. Then you would have Europeans. You would have Asians. Now, are those the three different distincts? Are South Americans different than Europeans? Right? In other words, without a doubt, there is a different look from Hispanics. But if you really kind of want to look at just by looks, and I'm just playing around here. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not an anthropologist. So, yeah. By no means am I trying to get out of my lane. But if you want to look at what three looks there will be, would it not be Caucasian, blacks, and Asians? Hispanics can fit in a couple of them, because they're not. Middle Eastern people can fit, right? Now, you could break it down. And again, not in any way trying to get out of my lane here. I'm just posing thoughts at this point. And the question is, what color then was Shem, Ham, and Japheth? And then how do you get the different, how does God get the different ethnicities? Right? So if you start off, in other words, if we had a visual, how would Shem look? How would Ham look? And how did Japheth? Now, people try to make the assumption based upon some of the land that is given here. Like Magog would be a good, Gomer Magog is believed to be around the Russian area. And it may or may not be. It could be Babylon, the Middle Eastern. Okay. But that's how sometimes you can see. Now this here, when you get down to verse 9, Cushan, we'll get back to that, but Cushans, again, you as the writer here is looking back, he certainly, you could say that there were some of these sons ended up land-wise. But we go back. What about Shem? What's up with Shem? Right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And I'm toying around with this question here. How did they look? Well, here's the interesting thing: we don't know. That's why we want to go there. We don't know. In other words, did Shem look Middle Eastern? Did Japheth look European? Did Ham look black? Now here's the interesting thing. We know we have them. We know we have black people, Hispanic, Asians, Middle Eastern, right? All of these different things. I think it's coming up to 7 because I missed a couple of them. 7. I'm kind of going around. But if you think about just Asian people, and that would include all the Asian people here. And I know that there are various nations within the Asian group. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese. Okay, they are all distinct. We can go on and on, but they're all distinct, right? Different nation-wise. Okay, but in general, you can put them all in the same kind of look, right? Now, without a doubt, black people, there are 55 different nations on the continent of Africa, and what is always interesting is that people refer to Africa as one nation, but there are 55 distinct nations. Middle Eastern people, right? And that's probably one of the most mixed group, because there are some Hispanics could fit in there, but without a doubt, Middle Eastern people have a certain look. But here's the question now. If Shem, if you want to say that, and by the way, Jesus' bloodline comes from Shem. So that's a fact. Jesus' bloodline comes from Shem. So we're the Asian people, right? Shem, Ham. If Shem is Middle Eastern, because the bloodline of Jesus comes from there, and Japheth is Caucasian, Japheth, and then Ham is black, where are the Asian people in this? The Shem, Ham, Japheth, where are the Asian people? Okay, like I say, just some thoughts to play around, but we're going to come back to this. Because what I said, remember I said that there are some gems in the genealogies, even though they're quite tedious in listing the names. Think about that one thing right there. That's a gem, and it's, by no means was I attempting to define. Just simply raise questions because these are what some people think of. Okay, guys, look, I'm gonna pick this up in the next study. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. Hit that subscribe button. If you have a thought, a comment, add it to the comments section below. Remember, all comments are welcome. I will see you in the next study.